here are two cheap weapon meta builds that you get access to pretty early on in the game that will help you start crushing PMCs. Let's get into it. So the first gun we're going to be talking about today is the UMP. Now the UMP is probably my favorite gun besides the Vector 45. It almost feels unmatched in terms of how good the gun is, especially for the price you're gonna be paying for it. So I have two versions of each gun here. This is my cheaper build on the left, and on my right is my more expensive build. If you zoom in here, so this is my budget version of the UMP 45. This build will cost you just over 100,000 rubles, about 120. And what you get with this version is you get a laser for that hipfire accuracy. You have your foregrip on it. It is silenced. I prefer to have all my guns silenced. It's just me. Although a compensator build on the RFB, which we'll talk about later, isn't too bad. The ammos you want to be using when you use the UMP, you have the 45 AP rounds or you have the FMJ rounds. Now, the 45 AP rounds will cost you about $5 a round, but the FMJ rounds are almost as good, and they're only $1 a round. Extremely cheap. With the AP, you're getting 70 damage on the AP, and you're getting 38 pen, whereas on the FMJ round, you're getting 76 damage and only 25 pen. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, the AP round only coming in with 38 pen, you might have some trouble against the tier 5 or 6 armors, but honestly, not really the case, and I'll actually show you why. So let's load in here on the UMP 45, and we'll go to the gun range for a second. Let's go right on to the end. Now, what makes the UMP 45 so good is basically the lack of recoil. It is so controllable, especially in a wipe where recoil is just so difficult. So let's dump this mag on one of the farther targets with the UMP. Right? I mean, I don't even know. There's not much I really have to say about it. There's almost no camera recoil on this thing whatsoever. It is extremely flat. It is very easy to see what you're shooting at. I almost do no controlling or compensation on the mouse whatsoever with the UMP, and this is on the cheap build. So on the more expensive build, it's just going to be a little bit nicer. Put our mag in the expensive UMP build, which just has a slightly better sight picture with the holographic sight and a slightly better ergonomic with the 4T's grip. When I shoot this guy, let's see if this is on single fire, full out of that. I mean, there's not much more to say about this gun. It is extremely cheap. It is deadly accurate with almost no recoil whatsoever. It's a great gun that you get out of level 2 Peacekeeper right out the gate. So there's almost no reason to not use this thing if you're going on like factory, or you're going on reserve, if you're going D2 farming in the bunker for raiders, for other players, anything close quarters. This thing is an absolute beast, and it will just destroy anyone. It is so clean. If you haven't tried it yet, you have to try the UMP 45. So the next gun I want to touch on is the RFB. Now, the RFB you'd be using in situations where the UMP falls short, which is at range. The RFB is a great gun to get into some of the road guides or the lighthouse map. Some of those maps that can give you a lot of XP and a lot of really good loot. The RFB is your best friend. The main reason why the RFB is so good is, one, it only costs you 55,000 for the RFB. My cheap loadout here, which is no scope, it's suppressed because I like the suppressor. I go with the cheap foregrip on it, the RVG black. This cheaper build is going to cost you about 140k. It's a little more expensive, but that's only because the caliber is much better. So innately, this build is going to be a little more. And the two rounds I like to use with the RFB is the M80 and the M62. Why are these rounds so good? The biggest thing is because both of these rounds will one-shot, headshot, scavs, raiders, or rogues without fail, always, as long as you don't get like a deflection off the helmet. If you get a solid hit, these 2 rounds will always one tap the head. That's also kind of the reason why things like 5.56 and 5.45, some of your M4 or your AK rounds, are just kind of faulting this wipe, because sometimes you can literally shoot a scav in the face and he will shoot back at you. It will not one-shot him after a certain range. It's kind of upsetting, but the RFB has got you covered for such a low price. Now, the more expensive build, it's gonna run you just over 200K, and the main reason for that is the better suppressor and the scope. There's almost no way to discount your scope. The scope is going to be expensive, and that's just because the scope is so useful. But let's jump into a range here with the budget RFB, just to give you guys an idea of what you'd be using. So this is the red dot version. Again, I really like this sight because you can see so much more. But once you've shot this thing enough, it is very easy to stay on target and hit those shots. I mean, if I run down to the body here, I mean, those are all extremely tight shots. And you're going to be killing most players. A lot of players only have tier 4 armor, maybe tier 5. And M80 will 2-shot tier 5 armor, and so will M62. Now, M80 will run you about, let's see, I think it's $3 a round for the cheaper ammo. But the M62, and another reason why this is so good, the M62 comes in with 79 damage and 44 pen. M80 comes in with 80 damage and 41 pen. They aren't too different, but the big thing with M62 is M62 also has a -5 recoil, which is very good. The way that works is it just takes 5 off whatever recoil you have on your gun when you shoot it. So you get a tighter recoil pattern with the M62s. You also get slightly more pen to ensure you're getting those 2 shots and you don't get unlucky. And the damage is 79, more than enough damage you need to kill any players at range, rogues at range, raiders at range, and everything like that. So if you haven't tried these already, if you're in the earlier stages of the game, I highly recommend you go with the budget UMP, the budget RFB. Now, of course, if you want to go more budget, you can always take off some of the parts I like to add on. You can go completely unsuppressed with the RFB. If I edit this preset, you can even go with a compensator, which is typically much cheaper than a suppressor would be. So you can go with something simple like let's go with this muzzle brake compensator. We get more ergonomics for going with that. Recoil goes down. And if you really want to go cheaper, you can take off the foregrip. You don't really need that much with the RFB. You can even just kind of go with the default build here and just put a scope on it if you wanted to, because you have that semi-auto. And maybe if you're in a real hurting spot, throw on the RFB, do some of the rogue farming to get some easy money. I have a video on that, or any other various guides I have on the channel. Same thing with the UMP. If you really want to make this cheaper than it already is, feel free to take off the suppressor. You could use the default iron sights if you wanted. Of course, you can always get rid of the foregrip here as well, but honestly, those small attachments I think are kind of worth the value. It's always better to throw more money in the ammo and the weapon. Ammo being your first priority, weapon being your second, before you do your armors. And that's because you can have the most armored loadout, on you, but if you're shooting BBs at somebody, they're gonna kill you like 9 times out of 10. So if you haven't tried these builds, I highly recommend it, and let me know what you think of them. Let me know what your favorite guns are. Let me know what your favorite budget guns are in the comments. I would love to hear and test some of those out. Maybe you'll be in a future video. With credit, of course, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. And remember, fire trucks flap their wings during full moons.